Greetings pilots, we have a bunch of news coming from producer Chris for Mecha Break. On July 28th, there's going to be the first major balance patch between almost every single striker in the game. This also includes some changes to Mashmac and a little bit more that I'm not really going to cover. We're only going to talk specifically about buffs and nerfs to strikers that are coming in the July 28th update. The first striker on the list is Falcon. Falcon is actually getting no number changes, which may be a disappointment to a lot of people out there who think Falcon's actually weak. But overall, the number of changes on every other striker does help to enhance Falcon's own gameplay. So Falcon's only getting one actual change to the striker itself, and that is the Recon Kit can now be canceled early. Those who have no idea what that is, the Recon Kit allows you to target enemies that are previously untargetable. It'll also show things behind walls. So think of cloaked Narukamis or Stellaris or someone trying to duck behind the cover. You can actually continue to track them. That was previously a very long cooldown, but now you can cancel that prematurely and get some of that cooldown refunded, which is a mechanic that a lot of strikers already have. And this is a DPS increase because not only are you able to turn it off after you kill your target or change targets, but in the case of certain maps where all of your targeting is just gone because of a weather effect, now you could be able to reactivate that at a moment's notice. The other part about Falcon, as far as actually increasing its damage, that's going to be a change from other strikers because a lot of them who have anti-air missile tech now has nerfs to their anti-air missile drones. The next striker is Aleseness. This one again is getting no actual damage increase, no numbers increases to the amount of damage it pumps out. The only thing it's getting is an ground energy regeneration increase. It's going from 8,800 to 9,100. What that means is that Aleseness in combat can stay in combat for longer, especially with melee combos, because you're not actually spending the energy as much. But anyone who is used to skirting around battlefields as sort of like a hybrid melee range Aleseness can do that more efficiently and pump out more damage before it has to stop. Tricera is the next striker and is receiving a round of nerfs, which honestly turn into slightly more skillful striker. The first one being its fluid armor depletion cooldown is increased. What that is as soon as you break fluid armor for any striker, it goes on cooldown before it starts to rapidly regenerate. That's going from 3.8 seconds to 4.2 seconds. That's one defensive layer that's been reduced. The second defensive layer, which is actually a buff to Falcon and anyone else who uses missiles, is that the anti-air drones, which is something that Tricera has, will actually have an increased firing interval. It's only 0.2 seconds, but because most strikers that fire missiles fire a lot of missiles at once, this will allow some of those missiles to get through if Tricera is the only one doing the block. So in that case, some of them will start hitting Tricera. This will make the damage from Falcon a little bit more reliable, but also helps out Stego when firing missiles as well. There's also a secondary nerf, which is a pretty major piece to Tricera in terms of the turtling gameplay, is that you actually do not get the ammo for the anti-air drone back unless you go out of turret form. So what's happening is that you could previously sit in turret, block the missiles, you'll be constantly reloading that ammo for the anti-air drone, and now that's no longer the case. You actually have to swap back into regular form in order to replenish your anti-air drone. And then the final nerf, the Fortress form, which is the turret for Tricera, has a decreased rotation speed. It's going from 160 degrees per second to 130 degrees per second, meaning that anyone who wants to circle strafe around Tricera can also do that more reliably. Think of melee units, light units, anything that can dance around the Tricera will be able to do that without as much fear of being just lasered down the entire time. The next striker is Stego, and it's actually getting the same turret form nerf that Tricera's getting. The rotation speed is getting decreased from 140 degrees per second to 110 degrees per second. And the reason why it's so much less is that the reticule for Stego is so much bigger than Tricera. You actually oftentimes can't not target something. So the speed at which you can go from one target to the next target outside of your reticule has been decreased. As another nerf to Stego is for the Jamming Haze Diffuser. That's the smoke cloud. With that, Stego is able to replenish its fluid armor, and if you technically combine that with Tricera, who has healing built in, then things like Tricera becomes nigh unkillable. Stego drops the smoke screen and can reposition itself, so it becomes actually like very, very strong. So Jamming Haze Diffuser's cooldown is going from 22 seconds all the way up to 30 seconds, which is a pretty major nerf. In this case, the chance that it has it up again is less because they're also nerfing the lingering effect from 3 seconds down to 1 second. You are repositioning with the smoke, it falls off in only 1.5 seconds, and then Stego is exposed again. So this allows, again, more of these attack units to be able to attack the Stego more often. The next striker on the list is Welkin, which is getting a round of nerfs. Welkin is probably the highest win rate striker in the game, probably across all divisions. It's the only striker of its kind. The nerfs that's getting, starting off with the defensive force field, that's the barrier that you see in front of Welkin, previously lasted for 12 seconds, now is only going to last for 8 seconds. So as soon as you see that shield go up, you could actually disengage and have that shield fall off fairly quickly. The cooldown has not changed, it's still 24 seconds, and Welkin can still deactivate it early, but the biggest piece of it is that in an extended brawl, it's only gonna last for 8 seconds. Speaking of brawling, the melee attack damage for the Welkin on the second and third swing has been nerfed in its damage. It's only a 7% damage drop. I'm sure for like light strikers, it's probably not noticeable, but maybe for the heavier ones with higher HP, it might take one additional swing or two before it's actually killed. Next up is Narukami. This has a pretty low pick rate, probably just as low as a win rate, and not a lot of team utility as well. So the buffs to Narukami, and these are all buffs that are coming up, not with damage increase, because there's no damage increase here, but with better gameplay. So first off, Decoy Drone, which is the ability to put down a drone that can also shoot and then gather targeting from enemies. The stealth radius for this is up 60% from 100 meters to 160 meters. So the chance of you going out of range of a decoy drone and dropping invisibility is less, but then also decoy drone's recall distance has been increased to 260 meters. So even if you're out of range of a decoy drone, it doesn't actually disappear until you're even further away than normal. This allows you to hold off on any of your fighting if you're trying to like outrun an enemy and then not necessarily get targeted as easily. There's a second piece to that though, because they also increased its max energy from 17,000 to 20,000. So if you do need to reposition, you can actually go further and longer than you were before. Also, keep in mind that Narukami has a grapple hook too, so that also extends the distance you can move. Jump height has also increased as well. It's a 10%-ish difference from 70 meters to 78 meters. This allows you to escape melee fighting a little bit more often. Also, maybe reach that grapple hook spot that you couldn't reach before. But then the final buff to Narukami, which is maybe the most important, as far as team utility goes, is that the optical camo drone, which is a field that you can put down to give yourself invisibility or others invisibility around you, that can now be placed on allies within a 300 meter range. Previously, this only dropped directly under Narukami. Now you can imagine that during point capture, you can throw out the invisibility to teammates within the area in order for them to either do more damage or capture a point within the invisibility drone. Now, moving on to Hurricane, this one is one of my favorite buffs, and it's all buffs across the board for Hurricane. First off is getting just a raw DPS increase. The Energy Blaster, which is one of the biggest issues with both Hurricane and Inferno, is that it has very low ammo for its basic attack. So here we're actually getting a DPS increase on the individual shot. Of course, those still have to matter because if you miss it, you are subjected to a very long reload time. The charged version of the Energy Blaster is getting a major DPS bonus, going from 1500 over 8 ticks, so it like activates 8 times as it deals its damage, to 1900 over 8 ticks. And that is pretty massive. Anything that decides to stay within that energy field is going to take it significantly more damage than it was before. However, because of this, there's a slight nerf to the reload time, even more than it is now. The reload time is going from 3 seconds up to 4 seconds. Similar to the Narukami buff to the optical camo drone, Hurricane's defensive drone is also getting a buff where it can be cast on allies. So now you can put it on allies that are capturing a point. You can play like Pinaka and just like snipe an ally with the defensive field to prevent them from dying. Has a lot of utility now, a lot more than it did in the past. And then finally, the decoy drone, which is the alternate attack on Hurricane. This previously just deployed a decoy, and Hurricane will also put up a shield for itself to like parry a melee attack. Now melees are even further punished for dealing with Hurricane's decoy drone, where if they attack that decoy drone, they will be stunned for 1.6 seconds, which is a pretty significant amount. It's also an area stun, so if it's too melee, like a Panther and a Leesness, or if you drop it during the spin to win from Welkin, anyone that's in that box with you that's an enemy is probably also going to get stunned, which is a pretty good buff and increases not only your survivability, but anyone else who could have been in that box as well. Sky Raider is the next striker that's getting actual DPS increase, but also has a couple of nerfs as well. First off, the Energy Missile, which is the sort of like anti-stationary missile. When it fires, it leaves a lingering bubble. Anything inside it gets ticked down for 15 ticks of damage. That's going up from 3,000 to 3,200. Even though that's like a little bit less than a 10% increase, it is significant damage on all 15 ticks on something like a Tricera or a Stego or anything else that doesn't want to move from the location that's at. Next, Sky Raider is getting the same nerf to its anti-air missiles that Tricera is getting. The anti-air drone ammo is not going to replenish unless Sky Raider is out of flight form. If you're playing Sky Raider, you need to be swapping forms relatively often to maintain your energy anyway. So I think anyone playing at like the highest levels of Sky Raider will feel this a little bit, but it's not going to change their overall gameplay. You're going to need to start learning to do this, or else you may start losing fights to Falcon and Stego because these missiles will come at you and you will not have any ammo in your anti-air drone. Finally, the jamming missile, which is another piece of utility for Sky Raider. This is getting its duration decreased from 5 seconds down to 4 seconds. That means the field at which enemies cannot lock on, that's gonna not last for as long as previous. So you're gonna end up having to do more fights more often as Sky Raider. Aquila is the next super high win rate, super high pick rate striker that's gonna get nerfs across the board. If you've ever played against Aquila, you know exactly how this thing plays. It stays in the air. If you try to get close to it, it just spams dash backwards so you can't actually reach it. So the things that are going to get nerfed here are not the damage numbers. Again, it's how the striker plays in the form of energy nerfs. First off, the airborne kit. The energy consumption in the air is going from 1200 per second to 2400 per second, which is double. In the air while hovering, it's spending double the energy on the airborne kit. Furthermore, when you boost using the airborne kit, that consumption is going to go up from 2400 to 2800. So again, an Aquila trying to kite backward is going to expend its energy faster than before, so that allows other folks who are actually like maintaining their energy able to catch up. With airborne kit turned off, Aquila had a second energy bar, so the same thing has to be done to that energy bar. The energy reactivation threshold for all strikers, if you go out of energy, it takes a little while before you can actually do anything with energy. That's going to be increased from 24% to 34%. So a grounded Aquila that spent all its energy is going to be super vulnerable. And finally, a minor nerf here, the energy regeneration in the air. So that is, you like stop using all of your jets, free fall, and then reactivate. That's going from 1270 down to 1200. Probably not super noticeable, but this is something that will impact that infinite flight that the pro Aquila players know how to maintain. Next up, we have Pinaka. Pinaka is getting only one single change. It's not an increase to its healing capability, it's not survival, it's not damage. Instead, the reticule is having a size increase from 450 to 550. If you've ever talked to anyone who regularly plays Pinaka, you will be told about the frustration you get trying to actually lock on to your own teammates. This is going to help that out without making the stego issue where like your entire screen is a lock-on area. Next up is probably the biggest surprise that I saw in this entire live stream, and that is buffs to Inferno across the board. Not a single nerf in here. None of this is damage increase, but instead, I guess they're trying to really enhance a core gameplay of Inferno, and that is the booster kit. So first off, booster kit's evade distance is going from 60 meters all the way up to 90 meters, a 50% increase on the booster kit's evasion distance. So that's like how far you travel when you press the shift button. Those at like the really high tiers of Inferno know how to toggle booster kit on and off. So what you do is you activate it, you reposition, then you deactivate it so you get the cooldown reduced, and then you continue to pump out damage. This is going to help that out. We also have a jump height increase from 50 meters to 70 meters. This really helps you get stickier on the Aquilas, the Falcons, anything that's in the air while you're trying to maintain your energy beams pointed at it. Not only that, but the ascend speed with booster kit enabled is even faster. So not only is your jump height faster, but the time it takes you to reach that height is faster. Same thing with boost speed. All around, giga buffs for Inferno's booster kit. If booster kit is not engaged, we have a ground energy consumption decrease from 3600 to 3000. You don't really have to worry about those numbers too much. Just know that when you're trying to do basic dodges, remember this thing has no defensive capability at all except for booster kit. So the amount of energy you spend on doing dodges is actually reduced. Next up, we have Sereneth. Sereneth has a lot to its kit, where if you don't have a really good understanding of what these buttons do, you're gonna find Sereneth to be an underwhelming striker. So for the most part, this is getting buffs. It's not gonna make it like on the top end of gameplay absolutely OP, but definitely on, you know, the bottom end, the mid end, or mid tier I should say, the way you play Sereneth is going to be a lot easier. So first off, Disruption Grappler, that's the thing that makes enemies, you know, target their own allies. This could be easily broken by most people who can react to the connection of the grappler. Now it inflicts a minor stun to the target. If they don't react to that, they will get the disruption applied to them, and now they essentially, can't press too many buttons. The auxiliary 2 for Sereneth, which is Disruptor, this will now clear all debuffs as soon as you activate it and make you immune to stagger and immobilization. A lot of strikers already have this. For example, Pinaka doing the emergency field on yourself will remove all stagger and immobilization, and you can dash away from Welkin like immediately. So Sereneth now has that gameplay at the same time. We have a similar evasion consumption decrease that Inferno is also given. So evasion on the ground is decreased from 1600 to 1400. Evasion in the air from 2000 down to 1700. This just means that these fights that require dodging, you can do the dodges more often. We also have a jump energy decrease. The devs have said often that jumping is one of the best ways to dodge melee, for example, and this is one way to do that. And then finally, Sereneth is getting a pure DPS increase with orbital targeting system. That is the longer version of the orbital target that leaves a lingering field. That tick rate is going from 1850 over 15 ticks to 2200 over 15 ticks. What you're really trying to see here is that these Triceras, these Stegos, anyone who is like focused on an objective and not moving, all around really good buffs for Sereneth, and not any nerfs as far as I can tell. So with Sereneth, that's actually the final striker that's getting a change in the PvP, PvE environment. There's no change to Lumine, there's no change to Stellaris, and things like Elysius is getting like only one change. I would like to go on record to say that this is a massive update that gets like a really big seal of approval from me. I'd love to know your thoughts as a fan of Mecha Break. Do you enjoy everything that you're seeing here? Are there buffs or nerfs that you have liked to have seen that weren't including in this update? If so, let me know in the comments. If you want to hear more updates about Mecha Break or see gameplay, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow me over on Twitch. Otherwise, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you on the next one.